On Christmas Eve, my father slammed the door in my face and said I was no longer welcome in their home because I chose the military over family. My mother stood behind him, tears streaming, but said nothing. 3 months later, I walked into my sister's graduation ceremony in my dress whites, and her Navy SEAL team leader immediately stood at attention and saluted. "Ma'am, Admiral." The look of shock on my family's faces when they realized who I really was, that was the moment I knew 20 years of rejection had been worth it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Commander Rachel Matthews, and I was born into a family that believed military service was for people who couldn't make it in the real world. But that's not the whole story. The first time I mentioned wanting to join the military, I was 12. My father, a successful corporate lawyer, looked at me like I'd announced plans to become a circus performer. "Smart girls don't throw their lives away playing soldier," he said, adjusting his tie. "That's for kids who can't get into college." My mother, a university professor, nodded in agreement. "Rachel, sweetheart, you're too intelligent for that. Military service is what poor families do when they run out of options." They had it all mapped out for me. Law school, like Dad. Maybe academia, like Mom. Definitely something that would look good at their country club dinner parties. When neighbors asked about their children, they'd beam talking about my older brother Marcus, the investment banker, and my younger sister Emma, the pre-med student. But when it came to me and my military aspirations, they'd quickly change the subject. Outside our house, their social circle shared the same prejudice. The Hendersons next door. The Clarks from the tennis club. The Williamses who owned half the businesses downtown. They all wore their children's civilian achievements like badges of honor. High-paying careers meant successful parenting. Military service meant failure to launch. At school, I lived a contradiction. I was valedictorian, debate team captain, and student body president. But at home, none of that mattered when weighed against my obsession with military service. My mother once said to her book club, loud enough for me to hear, "Rachel's brilliant, but she has this strange fixation. We're hoping it's just a phase." I remember the night I brought home my ROTC scholarship letter like it was yesterday. Full ride to Naval Academy, one of only 50 awarded that year. I was 17, holding what I thought was my golden ticket to everything I'd ever wanted. My father barely glanced at it before setting it aside. "That's nice, honey, but let's talk about real colleges. I've already called my friend at Harvard Law." My mother tried to be gentler. "Sweetheart, you don't understand what you'd be giving up. The military will change you. You'll come back broken if you come back at all." She pulled out newspaper clippings about PTSD, veteran homelessness, military suicides. "Is this really what you want for your life?" But I saw something different in those articles. I saw service members who dedicated their lives to something bigger than themselves. I saw sacrifice, honor, and purpose. While my family saw statistics, I saw heroes. Hewe. Emma tried to be supportive, at least privately. "I think it's cool," she whispered one night, when our parents were arguing downstairs about my stubbornness. But even she didn't really understand. "Maybe you could do military law? That way you could still make Dad happy." That's when I realized this wasn't just about career choices. This was about two completely different value systems. My family measured success in dollars and social status. I measured it in service and sacrifice. The foundation they'd built their entire identity on was about personal achievement. The foundation I wanted to build my life on was about collective purpose. I didn't know it then, but that scholarship letter would be the beginning of a 20-year journey that would cost me my family but give me something far more valuable: the chance to discover who I really was. At Annapolis, I thrived in ways my family couldn't understand. While they attended charity galas and country club events, I was learning leadership under pressure, studying naval strategy, and pushing my physical limits beyond what I thought possible. During holiday breaks, I'd return home in my crisp midshipman uniform, only to be asked to change clothes before family dinners. "People will think we're showing off," my mother would say, though I knew the truth. They were embarrassed. The contrast became more painful each semester. At the academy, I was respected for my dedication and performance. I ranked in the top 10% of my class, led my company as brigade commander, and earned recognition for my strategic thinking. My professors saw potential. My classmates saw a leader. But at home, none of that translated. During my sophomore year, Marcus brought home his new girlfriend, a corporate attorney like Dad. The family threw a dinner party to celebrate their engagement. When guests asked about me, my parents would mention I was away at school, but never specified where. When I tried to share stories about my maritime law courses or leadership training, the conversation would quickly shift to Marcus's latest deal or Emma's pre-med achievements. "Rachel's always been the independent one," my father would say with a tight smile. "She's very determined." The word determined became their code for stubborn and misguided. Emma was caught in the middle. At family gatherings, she'd try to bridge the gap. "Tell them about your tactical exercises," she'd whisper. But when I did, the room would fall silent, and someone would inevitably change the subject to something more appropriate. I started noticing how they talked about other military families in our social circle. The Johnson's son was a Marine, and my parents would speak about him in hushed, pitying tones. "Such a shame," my mother would say. "He had so much potential." When the Davis's daughter was deployed to Afghanistan, they'd shake their heads. Her poor parents, they must be worried sick. Military service wasn't seen as honorable in their world. It was seen as a last resort, a failure to achieve something better. The breaking point came during my junior year. I'd been selected for a prestigious summer internship at the Pentagon, working directly with naval intelligence officers. It was an incredible opportunity that would set me up for my desired career path in military strategy. When I called home excited to share the news, my father's response was ice cold. "Rachel, we need to talk about your future seriously. This military fantasy has gone on long enough. I can still get you into law school if you transfer next semester." "Dad, this isn't a fantasy, this is my career." "Your career?" His voice rose. "Playing war games with taxpayer money? Rachel, you're throwing away every advantage we've given you." My mother took the phone. "Sweetheart, we're worried about you. This obsession isn't healthy. Maybe you should talk to someone." That phrase haunted me. Not "maybe you should reconsider," or "maybe we should understand better." Maybe I should talk to someone. As if my dedication to service was a mental health issue that needed professional intervention. I realized then that they weren't just disappointed in my choices. They were building a narrative where my military service was evidence of psychological instability. If I succeeded despite their disapproval, they could explain it away as the result of an unhealthy fixation. That summer at the Pentagon, surrounded by brilliant officers who dedicated their lives to protecting our nation, I felt more at home than I ever had in my family's mansion. These people understood duty, honor, and sacrifice. They saw strength where my family saw weakness. I was living two completely different lives, and I knew eventually I'd have to choose which one was real. My graduation from the Naval Academy should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. I finished third in my class, earned the prestigious Maritime Excellence Award, and was commissioned as an ensign with orders to report to Naval Intelligence Command. The ceremony was held on a perfect May morning, with hundreds of families cheering as their sons and daughters crossed the stage to receive their commissions. My family attended, but their presence felt more like obligation than celebration. While other parents beamed with pride, taking countless photos and wiping away tears of joy, mine sat stiffly in their seats. My father checked his phone throughout the ceremony. My mother smiled politely but never cheered. Only Emma seemed genuinely excited, jumping up when my name was called. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and congratulations, I watched the Hendersons embrace their son, a new Marine second lieutenant, with tears streaming down their faces. "We're so proud of you," his mother sobbed. "You're going to serve our country with honor." When I approached my family, my father's first words were, "Well, that's finished. Now you can move on to something serious." "Dad, this isn't finished. This is just the beginning. I'm a naval officer now." My mother stepped forward, touching my arm gently. Rachel, you've proven whatever you needed to prove. You can still apply to law school for next fall. I've spoken to the dean at Northwestern. That's when I realized they'd never seen my military service as real. To them, the academy was an expensive 4-year detour, not the foundation of my career. They'd spent my entire education waiting for me to come to my senses and join the family business of prestigious civilian careers. The real breaking point came 3 months later. I was home for what I thought would be a celebration dinner before my first deployment. I'd been assigned to a classified intelligence operation in the Pacific Fleet, an assignment that spoke to my potential for rapid advancement. I was excited to share this milestone with my family. Instead, I walked into an intervention. My parents had invited Dr. Patricia Kellerman, a family therapist and longtime family friend. They'd also asked Marcus and Emma to attend. The living room was arranged like a therapy session, with chairs in a circle and tissues strategically placed on the coffee table. Rachel, my father began, we're all here because we love you and we're concerned. Dr. Kellerman leaned forward with practiced sympathy. Your family has shared their worries about your continued involvement with the military. They feel you might be avoiding civilian life because of some underlying issues. I looked around the circle. Marcus avoided my eyes. Emma looked uncomfortable but said nothing. My mother was already crying. Casa. We think you're running away, my mother said through her tears. First to the academy, now to these deployments. When are you going to stop hiding and come home? I'm not hiding, I'm serving my country. My father's composure cracked. Serving your country? Rachel, you're wasting your life playing soldier while your siblings build real careers. Emma's been accepted to Johns Hopkins Medical School. Marcus just made partner. What do you have to show for 4 years except a uniform? That's when I understood the scope of their delusion. They genuinely believed that military service was inferior to civilian achievement. They'd invited a therapist not to understand me better, but to fix what they saw as my broken thinking. Dr. Kellerman spoke again. Rachel, your family worries that you're using military structure to avoid making independent adult decisions. I stood up, my hands shaking with rage and hurt. Independent decisions? I've been making independent decisions since I was 12 years old, and every single one has led me away from this family. The room fell silent. For the first time, I'd said out loud what we all knew. I didn't belong here, and maybe I never had. After walking out of that intervention, I didn't speak to my family for 6 months. I threw myself into my first deployment with the Pacific Fleet Intelligence Division, stationed aboard the USS Constellation. The work was classified, challenging, and exactly what I'd trained for. While analyzing maritime security threats and coordinating with Allied naval forces, I felt a sense of purpose my family would never understand. But their words haunted me during quiet moments. Wasting your life. Playing soldier. Avoiding real decisions. I began documenting everything, not because I planned to use it against them, but because I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. I saved every performance evaluation, every commendation, every letter of recommendation from superior officers. Kess, my fitness reports were exceptional. Ensign Matthews demonstrates outstanding analytical capabilities and natural leadership qualities. Recommend for accelerated advancement track. Exceptional officer with unlimited potential. I kept these in a private folder, evidence that contradicted my family's narrative about my wasted life. During shore leave, I'd call Emma. She was the only one who'd maintained contact, though carefully. Our conversations were coded, dancing around the elephant in the room. How's the Navy treating you? She'd ask. I'm thriving, Em. I really am. Mom asks about you sometimes. She misses you. Does she? Or does she miss the daughter she wanted me to be? The silence on the other end always answered that question. I learned that my parents had been telling their social circle that I was taking some time to figure things out and would likely return to civilian life soon. They'd even kept my childhood bedroom exactly as I'd left it, as if my naval career was an extended camping trip. Marcus visited me once during a business trip to San Diego. We met for dinner at a restaurant near the base. He seemed genuinely curious about my life, asking about my duties and responsibilities. For a moment, I thought maybe one family member might understand. The work sounds interesting, he admitted. But Ratch, don't you want more? Marriage, kids, A normal life? This military thing is impressive, but it's not sustainable long term. Even Marcus, who I'd hoped might be different, saw my career as temporary, a phase to outgrow rather than a calling to embrace. That conversation crystallized something important. My family's inability to accept my choices wasn't about concern for my well-being. It was about their own identity. Having a daughter in the military challenged their worldview about success, status, and what constituted a worthwhile life. I began preparing for the possibility that this divide might be permanent. I opened my own bank account, completely separate from the family trust fund I'd never accessed anyway. I established relationships with mentors in the Navy who became my chosen family, officers who understood dedication, sacrifice, and the honor of service. Commander Sarah Chen, my division officer, became particularly important. She'd faced similar family disapproval early in her career. Some families can't see beyond their own limitations, she told me during one of our mentoring sessions. Your job isn't to make them understand. Your job is to serve with honor and let your achievements speak for themselves. I started writing in a journal, not about my family's rejection, but about my goals. I wanted to make Admiral by age 45. I wanted to specialize in strategic intelligence. I wanted to serve in command positions that would allow me to shape naval policy and protect American interests. For the first time, I was planning a future based entirely on my own ambitions, not my family's expectations. I was becoming the officer I'd always dreamed of being, even if it meant becoming a stranger to the people who'd raised me. The woman my family had tried to fix was exactly who I was meant to be. 3 years into my naval career, I achieved something that changed everything. Early promotion to lieutenant commander. At 26, I was the youngest officer in my division to reach that rank. The promotion came with a prestigious assignment to the Pentagon's Strategic Planning Division, working directly with senior naval leadership on classified operations. The day I received the news I was stationed at Naval Base Norfolk, Captain Rodriguez called me into his office, his face serious but his eyes bright. "Matthews, you've been selected for accelerated advancement. Your strategic analysis work on the South China Sea operations caught some very important attention in Washington." He handed me the official orders, and I read them twice before the reality sank in. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Matthews, assigned to the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations. A dream assignment that typically required 10 years of service, and I'd earned it in 3. For the first time since graduation, I felt the urge to call my family. Surely this would prove that my career wasn't a phase or a mistake. This was validation from the highest levels of military leadership that I belonged here. Portas. I called Emma first. Her excitement was genuine and infectious. "Rachel, that's incredible, the Pentagon? You're basically working for the admirals now. Do you think Mom and Dad would want to know?" There was a pause. "I think they should know, this is huge." I called home that evening. My mother answered, and her voice immediately warmed when she heard mine. "Rachel! Oh, honey, it's so good to hear from you. We've missed you terribly." "Mom, I have news." "Good news. Are you coming home? Are you ready to transition out?" "No, Mom. I've been promoted. Early promotion to lieutenant commander, and I'm being assigned to the Pentagon." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Mom? That's nice, sweetheart. Are you sure this is what you want? You sound tired." I wasn't tired. I was exhilarated, but she heard what she wanted to hear. When my father took the phone, his response was even more deflating. "Lieutenant Commander? What does that actually mean in terms of real career prospects? Can you transition those skills to the private sector?" They couldn't even congratulate me without immediately looking for an exit strategy. That weekend, I drove to Norfolk's historic district and sat by the harbor, watching naval vessels navigate the channel. Young sailors walked past in their dress blues, heading out for liberty, and I felt a profound sense of belonging. These were my people. This was my world. I called Commander Chen, who'd become my closest mentor. "Sarah, I think I need to accept that my family will never understand this life. Rachel, some families can't see greatness because they're too focused on convention. But your naval family sees it. Your superior officers see it. The Pentagon sees it. That's what matters." She was right. The Navy had become my real family. My shipmates celebrated my achievements without reservation. My commanding officers invested in my development because they saw my potential. The institution itself had wrapped around me like a supportive embrace. Moving to Washington, D.C. felt like arriving home. My apartment was small but comfortable, walking distance from the Pentagon. For the first time, I was surrounded entirely by people who shared my values and understood my dedication. I sent my family a postcard from the Lincoln Memorial, working at the Pentagon now, finally where I belong. My mother's response came 2 weeks later. We're keeping your room ready for when you're ready to come back to real life. I folded that letter and put it away. There would be no coming back, because this was real life. My life. And it was exactly what I'd always dreamed it would be. The call came at 03:00 hours on a Tuesday. Emma's voice was shaking, barely controlled panic cutting through the static of our secure line. Rachel, something's wrong with Dad. He's having chest pains. We're at St. Mary's Hospital. The doctors, they say it's serious. I caught the first flight home, my mind racing between duty and family. Despite everything, he was still my father. I arrived at the hospital in my service dress blues. I'd come straight from a Pentagon briefing and hadn't had time to change. The cardiac unit waiting room felt like enemy territory. My mother sat hunched in a plastic chair, her face pale and drawn. Marcus paced by the windows, still in his expensive suit from court. Emma rushed to hug me, but I could see the others recoil slightly at my uniform. "How is he?" I asked. "Stable but weak," my mother whispered. "The cardiologist says he needs bypass surgery, the stress of the last few years." She looked directly at me. This family conflict has been killing him slowly. I felt the accusation like a physical blow. Somehow, my father's heart condition was my fault for pursuing my career. Marcus stopped pacing. "Rachel, we need to talk, as a family." They led me to a private consultation room where Dr. Williams, the cardiologist, was waiting. He was older, distinguished, and clearly uncomfortable with whatever conversation was about to happen. "Dr. Williams has been treating Dad for anxiety and stress-related symptoms for 2 years," Marcus began. "The family situation has been a significant contributing factor." My mother spoke quietly. "Rachel, your father lies awake at night worrying about you. About your safety, your future, your isolation from the family. The stress has been enormous." Dr. Williams cleared his throat. "I don't typically get involved in family dynamics, but Mr. Matthews has mentioned his concerns about his daughter's military service repeatedly. The anxiety has definitely impacted his cardiovascular health." I stared at them, realizing what was happening. They were medicalizing my father's disapproval, turning his inability to accept my choices into a health crisis that I was responsible for. "Are you suggesting that my naval career is giving my father heart problems?" "We're saying," Marcus replied carefully, "that family harmony is important for everyone's well-being. Dad's condition is serious, Rachel. Maybe it's time to consider what's really important." The manipulation was breathtaking. They'd weaponized my father's illness to guilt me into abandoning my career. "I want to see him," I said. In the cardiac ICU, my father looked smaller than I remembered, connected to monitors and IV lines. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Rachel, you came." "Of course I came, Dad. I've been so worried about you, so scared you'd get hurt somewhere far away and we'd never see you again." I held his hand, feeling the weight of genuine love mixed with fundamental misunderstanding. "Dad, I'm not in danger. I'm serving my country with honor." "But at what cost?" His voice was weak but intense. "You've lost your family. You're alone. When I'm gone, what will you have?" "I'll have a legacy of service. I'll have made a difference." He closed his eyes. "I'll never understand you." In the hallway afterward, my mother cornered me. "The doctor says stress reduction is crucial for his recovery. If you could just consider coming home, maybe taking a civilian job nearby." "Mom, I'm not leaving the Navy because Dad can't handle my career choice." "Then you're choosing the military over your father's life." The accusation hung in the air like poison. I looked at my family. Marcus nodding agreement, Emma torn but silent, my mother's eyes filled with desperate manipulation. "No," I said finally. I'm choosing truth over emotional blackmail. I left the hospital that night knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. They'd made it clear. My presence in their lives was conditional on abandoning my authentic self. 6 months after my father's heart attack, the warfare against my career became systematic and relentless. It started with small things I initially dismissed as coincidence. A background security check for my top-secret clearance renewal took unusually long. Questions were raised about my family's stability during routine psychological evaluations. Then I discovered why. Why Pentagon colleague Lieutenant Commander James Morrison pulled me aside after a classified briefing. Rachel, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but my wife works in personnel security. She mentioned your case came across her desk with some unusual family-submitted concerns. My blood ran cold. What kind of concerns? Someone in your family contacted the Office of Personnel Management, claiming you've been showing signs of psychological distress and family estrangement. They suggested your clearance might be compromised due to emotional instability. I sat in my Pentagon office that night, staring at the security questionnaire I'd filled out honestly years ago. Under family relationships, I'd listed my parents and siblings as supportive. Now they were actively trying to sabotage my career from within the system. The attacks escalated quickly. Emma called me crying 2 weeks later. Rachel, I'm so sorry, Mom made me do it. Made you do what? She had me call your commanding officer. She said if I didn't, she'd cut off my medical school funding. I told him I was worried about your mental health, that you'd been acting erratically during family visits. My hands shook as I hung up. My own sister had been coerced into filing false reports about my fitness for duty. Captain Henderson summoned me to his office the next morning. He was a fair man, a career officer who'd always supported my advancement, but his expression was troubled. Matthews, I've received some concerning reports about your personal life. Family members expressing worry about your psychological state, claims that military service has made you unstable. Sir, those reports are false. My family disapproves of my career choice and is attempting to force me out of the Navy. That's a serious accusation, Lieutenant Commander. Yes, sir, it is. He studied my file, then looked up. Your performance has been exemplary. Your fitness reports are outstanding. But these family concerns create complications for your security clearance. The investigation that followed was humiliating. Military psychologists interviewed me extensively. My personal relationships were scrutinized. My commitment to service was questioned, all because my family had decided that if they couldn't convince me to leave the Navy, they'd make the Navy want me to leave. But I wasn't alone. Commander Chen connected me with Captain Lisa Reeves, a military attorney who specialized in cases involving family interference with military careers. This is more common than you'd think, Captain Reeves explained. Families who can't accept their children's service sometimes try to sabotage their careers. It's a form of psychological warfare. She helped me document everything: the timing of the complaints, the coordination between family members, the inconsistencies in their claims. We built a case showing clear evidence of malicious interference. Meanwhile, I learned my family had been busy on other fronts. My mother had contacted my college alumni association, spreading rumors that I'd suffered a breakdown and was lost in military delusions. Marcus had reached out to family friends in government positions, asking them to check on my status and mental health. They'd turned my military service into a mental health crisis in their social circle. At country club dinners and charity events, I became the cautionary tale about what happens when smart girls make foolish choices. The breaking point came when I discovered they'd contacted Emma's Navy SEAL boyfriend, Tyler, trying to convince him to talk sense into me about leaving the military. They didn't know that Tyler had already become one of my strongest supporters, someone who understood the honor and sacrifice of military service. Ma'am, Tyler told me during a phone call, your family contacted me asking me to convince you that military life isn't suitable for women. They have no idea who you really are. That's when I realized this wasn't just about career sabotage anymore. They were systematically trying to destroy my reputation and credibility within every community I belonged to. The decision to expose my family's sabotage campaign came after they crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Tyler called me at 0600, his voice tight with controlled anger. Ma'am, your father contacted my commanding officer. He told Commander Walsh that I was dating an unstable naval officer who might compromise team security. He suggested I was being manipulated by someone with psychological problems. My father had reached into the Navy SEAL community, one of the most elite and close-knit units in the military, to try to destroy my relationship and reputation. This wasn't just about my career anymore. He was targeting anyone who supported me. I made an appointment with Admiral Patricia Stone, the highest-ranking woman in naval intelligence. Her office was intimidating, walls lined with commendations, photos with presidents and foreign dignitaries, artifacts from a distinguished 30-year career. But her eyes were kind as I explained my situation. "Admiral, my family is waging a systematic campaign to end my naval career through false accusations and interference with my security clearance. I have documentation of their coordinated efforts." She reviewed my file, Captain Reeves's legal analysis, and the timeline of incidents. After 20 minutes of silence, she looked up. "Lieutenant Commander Matthews, what you're describing is an attack on the integrity of our personnel system. This cannot stand." Admiral Stone didn't just believe me. She launched a formal investigation. Within days, Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents were interviewing everyone involved. They discovered a pattern of false reports, coordinated timing, and clear evidence of malicious intent. The investigation revealed that my family had contacted 7 different military offices, 3 security agencies, and multiple personnel in Tyler's SEAL unit. They'd created a paper trail of fabricated concerns while never once attempting to verify their claims or seek professional help for their supposed worries about my mental health. The NCIS report was damning. Agent Sarah Kim briefed me on their findings. "Ma'am, we've documented 18 separate incidents of interference over 8 months. This level of coordination suggests premeditation and malicious intent. Your family has essentially weaponized the security clearance process. Captain Reeves recommended we take the case public to prevent future incidents with other military families. This sets a dangerous precedent," she explained. "If families can sabotage military careers through false reports, it undermines the entire system." We contacted Michelle Rodriguez, a military affairs journalist with the Washington Post who specialized in personnel issues. When I sat across from her in a DC coffee shop, I felt the weight of ending my family's privacy forever. "This story is bigger than just your family," Michelle said after reviewing our documentation. "This is about the vulnerability of military personnel to domestic psychological warfare." The decision to go public wasn't easy. I spent 3 sleepless nights weighing the consequences. Going public meant burning bridges permanently. It meant admitting to the world that my own family had tried to destroy my career. But it also meant protecting other service members from similar attacks. The article published on a Wednesday morning. The headline read, "When Families Wage War on Military Careers, the Hidden Battle for Service Members' Right to Serve." Within hours, my phone exploded with messages. Fellow officers shared their own stories of family sabotage. Veterans reached out with support. Military wives told similar tales of families trying to force their daughters out of service through manufactured crises. The response was overwhelming and heartbreaking. One message stood out from Commander Lisa Park, a Navy pilot. "Rachel, my parents did the same thing when I became a pilot. You've given us all permission to speak about this abuse." But the response that mattered most came from Admiral Stone herself. "Lieutenant Commander Matthews, your courage in exposing this issue has protected countless other service members. This is what leadership looks like." The Navy's official response was swift and decisive. New protocols were established for handling family-initiated security concerns. Background investigators received training on identifying coordinated false reporting. My security clearance was not only restored but upgraded for my cooperation in exposing the vulnerability. Congressional hearings were scheduled to address the broader issue of family interference with military careers. I was invited to testify before the House Armed Services Committee about the need for stronger protections for service members. My family's reaction was predictable and devastating. Marcus left an angry voicemail. "You've humiliated this entire family on a national stage. We'll never forgive you for this betrayal." My mother's text was worse. "We raised you better than this. You've chosen strangers over your own blood." Emma's message broke my heart. I understand why you did it, but I don't know if we can come back from this. The Christmas invitation I'd been expecting never came. Instead, I received a formal letter from my father's attorney, requesting that I cease all contact with family members and not attend any family functions until further notice. They'd made it official. I was no longer welcome in the family I'd been born into. 2 years after going public, my testimony before the House Armed Services Committee changed military policy forever. Sitting at that witness table, facing cameras and congresspeople, I felt the weight of every service member who'd been silenced by family sabotage. Honorable representatives, I began, what happened to me represents a vulnerability in our military personnel system that threatens national security. When families can weaponize security clearance processes to force out qualified officers, we don't just lose individual careers, we lose institutional knowledge and operational capability. Congressman Bradley leaned forward. Commander Matthews, how widespread is this problem? Since my story became public, over 300 active duty personnel have contacted me with similar experiences. Family interference with military careers is far more common than anyone realized. The hearing lasted 4 hours. I presented documented cases, policy recommendations, and testimony from other affected service members. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. 3 months later, President Harrison signed the Military Personnel Protection Act into law. The legislation created strict penalties for false reporting against military personnel, established independent review processes for family-initiated security concerns, and provided legal protection for service members facing domestic sabotage. Admiral Stone called me personally with the news. Rachel, this law will protect thousands of military families. Your courage changed everything. But the most meaningful vindication came unexpectedly. I was promoted to commander ahead of schedule, with orders to take command of Naval Intelligence Unit Pacific. At 32, I would be the youngest woman ever to command a strategic intelligence division. The promotion ceremony was held at the Pentagon, with Admiral Stone presiding. As she pinned the oak leaves to my collar, she spoke words that healed years of family rejection. Commander Matthews, your dedication to service in the face of unprecedented personal adversity exemplifies the highest ideals of naval leadership. The audience included fellow officers, Pentagon officials, and congressional staffers who'd worked on the legislation. But the person who mattered most was Tyler, now my fiancé, standing in his dress blue uniform with tears of pride in his eyes. After the ceremony, a young ensign approached me nervously. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you. My parents tried to get me kicked out of the academy last year, using the same tactics your family used. Because of your case, the review board saw through their lies immediately." That evening, Tyler and I celebrated at our favorite restaurant near the Pentagon. Over dinner, he handed me an envelope. "This came to my unit today. I thought you should see it." Inside was a letter from Emma, written on Johns Hopkins Medical School letterhead. "Rachel, I've spent 2 years thinking about what happened. Medical school has taught me about family systems and psychological abuse, and I finally understand what our parents did to you was wrong. Deeply, inexcusably wrong. They tried to destroy your career because they couldn't control your choices. I was complicit in their abuse. And I'm ashamed. You were the strongest person in our family, and instead of supporting you, we tried to break you. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm proud of who you became despite us, not because of us. I hope someday I can earn the right to be your sister again." I read the letter 3 times, emotions flooding through me that I'd kept buried for years. Anger, hurt, hope, and something that might have been the beginning of healing. 2 weeks later, I received an even more surprising communication. The Secretary of the Navy's office called with an unusual request. A documentary filmmaker wanted to interview me about the Military Personnel Protection Act for a PBS special on military families. During the interview, the filmmaker asked, "Do you regret exposing your family's actions?" I thought carefully before answering. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they couldn't see my service as honorable. But I don't regret protecting other military families from the same abuse. Sometimes doing the right thing means choosing your values over your comfort. The documentary aired 6 months later, titled, "Honor Above All: Military Families and the Cost of Service." It won 3 Emmy Awards and sparked national conversations about family support for military personnel. But the real victory wasn't public recognition or policy changes. It was the letter I received from a Navy pilot whose parents had tried to sabotage her career. Commander Matthews, because of your courage, my family finally understands that military service is honorable. They attended my promotion ceremony last month and apologized for years of trying to force me out. You saved my career and my family. That letter sits framed on my office wall, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come from the battles we never wanted to fight. 5 years later, I stood in my Admiral's uniform at Emma's medical school graduation, watching my sister receive her doctorate in emergency medicine. The ceremony was held at Johns Hopkins, and Tyler sat beside me in the auditorium, our 6-month-old daughter sleeping peacefully in his arms. Emma had invited me personally, sending a handwritten note that read, "Rachel, I know I don't deserve your presence, but it would mean everything to have my sister there. You showed me what real courage looks like." When they called her name, she walked across that stage with purpose and pride. As she accepted her diploma, she looked directly at me and mouthed, "Thank you." In that moment, I understood that my choice to stand firm in my values hadn't just protected my own integrity, it had given my sister permission to find her own strength. After the ceremony, Emma approached us hesitantly. Tyler stood, extending his hand formally. "Dr. Matthews, it's an honor to meet you. Your sister speaks of you often." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked at our daughter. "She's beautiful. What's her name?" "Hope," I said. "Hope Michelle Matthews Rodriguez." "Hope?" Emma repeated softly. "That's perfect." We talked for over an hour, sharing stories about our careers, our dreams, and carefully beginning to rebuild something that had been broken for so long. She told me about her work in trauma medicine, how she'd specialized in treating veterans and military families. "I wanted to understand the community I'd helped hurt," she admitted. "Working with wounded warriors taught me what honor really means. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." My parents hadn't attended Emma's graduation. According to her, they'd become increasingly isolated, clinging to their old prejudices, while their children moved forward into lives they couldn't understand or control. Marcus had eventually reached out to apologize, admitting that my military success had forced him to question everything he'd believed about civilian superiority. 6 months after Emma's graduation, I received news that would define the rest of my career. The president nominated me for promotion to Rear Admiral, making me the youngest woman ever selected for flag rank. The Senate confirmation hearing was a formality. My record spoke for itself. The promotion ceremony was held at the Naval Academy, where my journey had begun 20 years earlier. Admiral Stone, now retired, flew in specifically to participate in the ceremony. As she and the Chief of Naval Operations pinned the stars to my collar, she whispered, "Your parents should be here to see this." "My real family is here," I replied, looking at Tyler, Hope, Emma, and the hundreds of naval officers who'd become my chosen family over the years. The reception afterward was attended by junior officers who'd benefited from the Military Personnel Protection Act, congressional staffers who'd worked on the legislation, and military families who'd found the courage to support their children's service because of my story. But the moment that mattered most came when a young midshipman approached me nervously. "Admiral Matthews, I'm Jennifer Chen. My parents tried to force me to quit the academy last year, but because of the protections you helped create, I was able to stay. I graduate next month, and I wanted to thank you for showing me that family loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing your authentic self." That night, Tyler and I walked through the academy grounds, where I'd first learned what it meant to serve something greater than myself. Hope slept against my chest as we passed Bancroft Hall, where young men and women were preparing to dedicate their lives to protecting our nation. "Do you ever regret it?" Tyler asked. "Losing your original family for this life?" I looked at the stars, reflecting on the Severn River, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. "I didn't lose my family," I said finally. "I found it. My real family is everyone who believes that service and sacrifice matter more than social status or personal comfort." 3 months later, I took command of the Naval War College, responsible for training the next generation of military leaders. My first address to the incoming class included words that had become my personal motto. "True strength isn't about choosing the easy path or pleasing the people who raised you. True strength is about choosing your values over your comfort, your integrity over your convenience, and your authentic self over other people's expectations. That choice might cost you everything familiar, but it will give you everything that matters. The legacy I'm most proud of isn't my rank or my achievements. It's the hundreds of military personnel who found the courage to serve authentically, because someone finally told them they didn't have to choose between family love and personal integrity. Sometimes breaking the cycle means accepting that not everyone will follow you into freedom. But someone has to go first.